And now to Extra Perspective. El Paso's government and local organizations are bracing for a surge of migrants once Title 42 is permitted to expire. That's the CDC health order giving Customs and Border Protection officers and Border Patrol agents the power to expel migrants without processing them to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Now, I spoke with El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego, who's meeting weekly with other agencies preparing for that surge, and reminded me this is not the first time the borderland braces for a surge.
Because we're already experiencing spikes and people coming in, we're sort of chipping away at the number of people that are going to come across after May the 23rd.
May 23rd is a target date for the lifting of Title 42. Border Patrol, hospitality shelters, and governmental agencies say the number of migrants coming to our borders is already increasing in anticipation of the lifting of Title 42. But Samaniego says preparations to meet a wave of migrants are already underway, with meetings among non-governmental organizations or NGOs like Annunciation House, Customs and Border Protection in both the city and county. The county judge says those meetings are similar to meetings held by the same agencies before another key milestone, which is expected to trigger a surge from Mexico. County Judge Samaniego compares the preparations that are being made for the lifting of Title 42 to the preparations that were made once COVID-19 restrictions were lifted at the bridges. We did not get the surge that was anticipated, but preparations were made nonetheless. He says key to the preparations once Title 42 is lifted will be volunteers.
One of the major challenges is volunteers. We don't have the volunteers that we used to have. Many of them died, unfortunately, in the pandemic. Most of them are afraid because they're over the age of 60 and very concerned.
And another concern is transportation. Agencies need to move migrants from shelter to shelter, as well as providing transportation for migrants to get to their sponsors outside of El Paso. If transportation is halted, the backlog of migrants staying in El Paso accumulates.
Because the minute they stay here, there becomes a totally different challenge and a phenomenon that we didn't have before. We never had to worry that we were in 72 hours, they were going somewhere, they had a sponsor. But if we can't get them out, and there's too many of them for us to be able to locate a sponsor, they have the option of staying here.
Samaniego says another wave of migrants is expected because of the conditions they're exposed to in shelters in Juarez.
Our shelter here, we don't deal with none of the challenges that the shelters deal over there. From kidnapping, from the coyote is working on them, so when they've got a lot of people at the shelters, they become a huge target.
You may recall Texas Governor Greg Abbott recently called for the transportation of migrants to the nation's capital to get them out of Texas. Samaniego is highly critical of that plan, calling it a Band-Aid solution. He says Abbott is not informing governors of states between Texas and Washington, D.C. before busing them through and handing off migrants to other agencies.
But you just can't put people on the bus and go through 5 different states and expect that cooperation. And you know, sleeping on the bus and of course, if you have 5 buses, 10 buses, that's not even, as we say, that's putting Kool-Aid in the ocean and thinking it's going to change color.
Ultimately, Samaniego says volunteers will be key to handling any surge that may come when Title 42 is lifted. He says it doesn't matter how many shelters or buses are on hand to handle the expected rush. Dealing with a surge will be next to impossible without volunteers.